Are you a fan of Colorado? Or do you know someone who is? Hi friends, I'm Corey from Alpenglow Basin Fiber Arts, and I am so excited to bring you a new tutorial today for my colorful Colorado beanie. You can see it here. It comes with a cute little yarn pom-pom, and if you missed my video from a couple weeks ago, I did share a tutorial on how to make a yarn pom-pom that does not fall apart, which is key because those things are usually very flimsy. The pattern for my colorful Colorado beanie comes in 3 sizes. There is a small size that would fit an early teenager, mid-teenager, or someone with a particularly small head. I have a medium that I'm going to demonstrate in the tutorial today. And then I have a size large that I'm wearing here, adult large, adult medium, and teen. If you're a traditionalist, you would certainly want to make your beanie in blues and red, bright red and yellow, which is the Colorado state flag colors. But I was inspired to make this hat after seeing so many cute little trucker hats that were Colorado hats, but they were made in alternate color schemes that have kind of an earthy tone. And you know me, if you've watched my channel long, you know I love earth tones. So I've made these two in some alternate color palettes, but you can see the Colorado sea still shines loud and proud, and it's hard to mistake it. I want to tell you a little about the hat. It is made completely in crochet. It's made in one piece, starting at the bottom, working the ribbing in rows, and then we join the rows and begin working in waistcoat stitch using stranded color work all the way through about 21 rows. And then the top of the beanie is made with a really cool decreasing pattern that makes it really nicely shaped. And then of course the pom goes right on top. The brim is awesome because you can fold it right up and adjust it how you want it. And it makes a really nice and cozy warm hat. This is an intermediate level project. It is a little bit tricky to work some of the color rows where you're using 4 to 5 colors all in the same row, but I will walk you through everything. And honestly, if you just take these middle rows nice and slow and take your time, it's not so bad. And then you just fly through the crown and the top. I hope you try it out. I hope you love it. And let's get started.
So today I'm going to be using Brava Sport. I've also made this hat in Swish DK from WeCrochet. Both of those are wonderful yarns. This is 100% acrylic. The Swish is 100% merino wool superwash. Even though one is a sport and the other one is DK, they really are very similar in terms of the thickness of the yarn. And I had no problem at all getting gauge with either the Swish DK or the Brava Sport. They were very, very similar. I even did a wraps per inch check on them to see how close they were, and they were so close I really couldn't tell the difference. Okay, so the colors I'm using today, this soft yellow is called Custard, this burgundy color is called Currant, this dark green is called Dublin, and this lighter green color is called Fig. And then for my white, I'm actually out of Brava Sport in the white, so I'm going to be using a little bit of Heatherly yarn Sport. And this yarn is also very similar in size to the others. And this color, I believe, is called Snowflake. Aside from the yarn, you'll need a 4mm or G size crochet hook. I'm using a Clover Amour. You'll need a yarn needle with a large head, and then a pair of scissors and a stitch marker. Okay, let's get started. To start our hat, we're going to start with the brim, and we're making the brim out of a single crochet ribbing stitch. And in the pattern instructions, you would make a slip knot and you would chain 22. However, I'm going to show you here in the video my favorite cast on that I use almost exclusively these days, and it's called the long tail cast on. But if you don't want to do this method, you can certainly just chain 22 and then join up with me when you're finished with that and ready to start row 1. To start the long tail cast on, we need a length of yarn that's about 3 times the width of our brim, and our brim will be 4 inches in length. Okay, so we're gonna just eyeball it, and we're gonna go 1, 2, and 3. And then at the end of that length, you're going to place a slip knot on your hook, like so. Okay, so this is my working yarn here, and over here I have my tail. I'm going to just drop my tail down in front of my hand here, and then I'm going to grab my working yarn in my other hand as if I were just going to do a chain. But instead of doing chaining, we're just going to take this tail and flip it over the top of the hook, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops. And that makes our first chain. But you can see the chain is doubled. It's almost like a double chain. And it works really, really well. It gives a nice clean edge, and I just love it. So again, we're just taking the tail, putting it over the hook, and then yarning over and pulling through both loops. Over the hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. And you don't want to do this very tightly when you put this tail over the hook. You want it to be a little bit loose, otherwise it'll tend to curl a little bit. But basically, finishing up here, we're going to need 21 of these chains, and you would count them just as you would a regular chain. If you look at the side of the stitch here, you can see the V's that you would see in a single crochet or in a chain stitch. They look just the same. It's just that it's double thick. So you would turn it over and you would count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I've got 12 on my hook so far, and I'm going to keep on going until I have 21. All right, there's 20 and 21. Okay, so there is the base foundation row for my brim. Okay, so for row 1, I'm going to chain 1. And if you have the 22 chains on your hook, because you did a chain instead of the long tail cast on, this would be the 22nd chain. So this chain that I made would count as your 22nd chain. So if you're doing the chain method, you would start in the second chain from the hook. And in my method here with the long tail cast on, you're going to place your first single crochet into this first chain of our foundation row here. And I like to work on the back side, and if you're using the chain method, I also recommend working on into the back bumps of the chain. Okay, so I'm going to work right on the back side, and I'm going to make a single crochet by inserting my hook, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, and pulling through 2 loops on the hook. I've made 1 single crochet, and now I'm going to move on and continue working a single crochet, and I'm working right over this tail in order to weave that in without having to do it with a yarn needle. So there's 2 and 3 single crochets, and again inserting, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Okay, so work all the way across, placing 1 single crochet in each chain or in each of your foundation stitches until you reach the other end, and then we'll join back up and start our ribbing. Here we are at the end of row 1, and now would be a good time to stop and count your stitches to make sure you're starting off with the right number of stitches, and make sure you have 21 stitches to make the brim of your hat. And now we're going to begin row 2. We'll chain 1 and we'll turn our work as if turning the page of a book. Now we're going to start back down the other side. But instead of working under both legs of our single crochet stitches the way we normally would, we're actually going to go down through the middle and only under the back loop. And we're going to work a single crochet in that back loop only, like so. And we're going to do that in each stitch across until we reach the last stitch of the row. Okay, I've worked all of my single crochets in the back loop only, and now I'm at the end of my row, and for the last single crochet, I am going to work a regular single crochet under both loops as I did in row 1 because it just gives us a little more durable and sturdy edge at the brim of our hat. And now we'll start on row 3, chaining 1 and turning. And row 3 all the way through row 72 in this case, because we are making the medium-sized hat, will just be a repeat of row 2. So we'll just continue making single crochet stitches in the back loop only for 72 rows. And then we'll join back up again to join the ends of our brim and start on part 2, the main body of our hat. Okay, I have completed 72 rows of the single crochet ribbing, and mine measures out to be about 14.5 inches. And again, I'm making the size medium. This is a very stretchy stitch, and so when we put it on our head, it will stretch right out and be a perfect size for that size medium. Okay, time to join these two ends together to make this round. And to do that, I have crocheted my last single crochet, and then I've chained 1, and I'm turning as if I were to crochet right back down this row, but instead we're going to join the two ends together with a row of slip stitches, matching up each of the stitches across from one another for all 21 stitches. To do this and make it look very invisible when we fold up the brim, we're going to be working into the back loop of the stitches on the side that's facing us, and then under both of the loops on the bottom of our chain foundation row on the other side. We have this chain 1 here, and then we're going to work in the back loop of the first stitch, and then come across. We're going to find the V of that first stitch and work underneath both loops. And to make a slip stitch, we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And that is one slip stitch. Let's do it again, finding that back loop, and then across from that, going under both loops of that stitch, yarn over and pull through everything. And when making these slip stitches, you don't want to make them too tight, because if you do, the seam that we're making here with the slip stitches will tend to bunch up and pull that rim so it looks funny. And you don't want that. You don't want it to be noticeable at all. So you want to keep your slip stitches a little bit loose as you're working across. Not so loose that it's floppy, but at the same time, a nice even tension, kind of that happy medium, nice slip stitches across. And we'll meet back up at the end and take a look at what we've made. I finished up my last slip stitch, and I'm just going to pull up some length here so we can take a look. You can see it's a little bit noticeable, but not dramatically. And we're going to treat this as the inside of the brim. Just want to show you that this will be the right side of the body of the hat, but since we fold up the brim, when we fold it up, the right side of the brim will be facing out, and that will be what goes around the base of our head. So getting back to the end, we are going to be changing colors to the fig color to start our color work. And so we just need to finish this off now. So to finish off, after our last slip stitch, we'll chain 1, pull up some length, snip the yarn, and then pull that yarn through that chain and tighten down a little bit. Okay, now we'll leave our hat brim just like this. We'll start our next round using the color chart. So here's the color chart that we're going to use for our size medium hat. You can see that the stitches are labeled here in the round. So we have 1 over here and number 72 at the other end, because we will have 72 stitches in each round. And then the row labels are over here on the vertical, with row number 1 starting there, and row number 21 is a solid white row at the top. Basically, the way that you read this chart is you'll be working in rounds. So you'll be working across from stitch number 1 to 72, and then you'll jump back here and start in row 2 with stitch number 1 through 72, and you'll jump back to row 3, stitch number 1 through 72. And you can see these first 3 rows are a solid light blue color in the chart. And for us, that's color B. And we're using the color Fig, which is a nice contrast to our dark Dublin color. Another note about keeping track with the chart is it's oftentimes helpful to have a second piece of paper that you can lay down over the rows as you complete them so that you can look at the next row without your eyes jumping up or down. So you can just keep moving that piece of paper up. A lot of people like to put this on a magnetic board and hold it down with magnets so that you can refer to the row that you're working on throughout the project. So we've got these 21 rows, and technically only about 17 of those or so are going to be multiple colors. For the most part, we start with a solid color, we end with a solid color, and then we'll work through some of these color changes in between, and we'll talk about how to manage floats and how to work through that, because at some point we'll be working with all 5 colors that we have available to us all in the same row. So it does take a little bit more time to get through those rows where you are managing lots and lots of colors, but it's very doable. You just have to take your time, go slow, be patient, and understand that maybe you'll need to pull back once in a while and frog a little bit and start over. I do it all the time because I am easily distracted and sometimes I lose track of all my floats. But we will start with row 1, which is a solid light blue color or color B row, which for us will be Fig. We'll get started on that now. To get that little tail out of our way so it's not distracting, I went ahead and weaved that in and snipped it off. So now we're going to start on our row 1, and row 1 is just going to be a single crochet in the end of each row around. So we have 72 rows of single crochet ribbing, and we're going to place 72 single crochets around that ribbing. If you look at the ribbing and kind of pull it apart, you can see we've got the rows pretty distinctly visible. You just have to take a look and decide which of the rows that are protruding out, and then the little valleys here. And you're just going to target putting a single crochet in each of those row ends. And I am going to start by putting my first single crochet in as a joining single crochet. So I insert into the spot I want, I yarn over and pull up a loop. I have 2 loops on my hook, and I'm going to go ahead and pull through both of those to form my very first single crochet. And that was in one of the peaks. And now down in the trough or the valley of the next row, or the next row is a valley, we're going to put another single crochet in the end of that. And now I'm back up to a peak, and so I'll put a single crochet in the end of that row, and now another in the trough row, the valley row. And we'll just keep working like this all the way around, and we'll double check our count when we get to the end to make sure we have 72 single crochet stitches. Now, one thing I want to mention about our single crochets, we are going to be doing for the rest of the hat after this row 1, we're going to be working in split single crochets or center single crochets. And to make those stitches, they're one and the same, we're going to be working into the post of these single crochets with our hook. So we're going to be going right through this little V that we see on the front of that single crochet stitch rather than working under the 2 legs on top. We're going to follow that down to the post, and we're going to work right between those 2 legs that make a V on the front of the post. And on the other side, we're going to be peeking out under the V, the downward facing V on the back side. So this is the spot we're going to be inserting our hook in the next row. And that can be a little tough to work into at times, because if you pull too tightly when you make these stitches, they can be really tight and hard to get into. So I want to show you a little trick for making these very manageable. So when we do this yarn over and we pull up this loop, it's important that we pull that loop up a little higher than we normally would, and then pull through the 2 loops on our hook. And what that does is it opens up that V just a little bit, so it's easier for us to work into in our next row. You'll do that on all the stitches that you make in the body of the hat, so you'll get into the muscle memory of that real fast. But it does really make the process of making these centered single crochets or the split single crochets a whole lot easier. So keep going, do your counts, And let's join back up in the last couple stitches of this round, and I'll show you how we start round number 2. Okay, I have counted my single crochet stitches and I have 71. So I've got one left that I'm going to place right here in this trough. And that completes my 72 stitches. Now, normally we would join our round, but we are going to work in continuous rounds now for the rest of the project. So to do that, we're going to, instead of joining to this first single crochet, we're going to go ahead and start our first split single crochet right into this V of the first single crochet stitch from round 1. And this will be our first stitch of round 2. And again, to do that split single crochet, we identify that V and we work down, and I like to work at kind of a downward angle and a little bit forward. And that usually pops my hook right through in the right spot between the legs of the V on the back of the stitch. So you get a hang of that after you've practiced it a few times, and it's not bad at all once you get used to it. So again, we're going to make sure we're always pulling up that loop a little bit higher so it's nice and level with our first loop on our hook. Pull through both of those loops, and now we've made our split single crochet. It's always a good idea to mark that first stitch of the round, and I actually like to mark the stitch on the front. I like to put it right through the post of the stitch because these stitches are going to stack up in columns. And for me, rather than moving my stitch marker every time I get back to this stitch, I actually like to just track the column up, and I always know where that first stitch is that way. You absolutely could just mark it right here in the top of the stitch and then keep moving that stitch marker up each round. But I like to do it this way. I don't know. I just don't like moving stitch markers, I guess. Okay, so that's stitch number 1. Now we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to angle in and down into that V, popping out on the other side. Yarn over, pull up a loop, nice and high, yarn over and pull through both. And again, through the V, popping out the other side, yarning over, pulling up a nice tall loop, and completing our stitch. And I'll let you watch me do this a few more times. Okay, so you can see I've started to make my round number 2, and you can see how the stitches from round number 1 and 2 just stack up right on top of each other. So looking back at our chart, we can see that round number 1 was all the same color. Round number 2 is also all the same color. From round number 2 on, all the way to the top of the hat, we're only going to be working the split single crochet stitches in continuous rounds. So no joining, just continuing to work across the rows, coming back, working across each of the rows, all the way through our color section. When we get to round 4, we will come back together right before we make this color change to our color C, our red yarn. Okay, so keep working the chart in your pattern for your size, and we'll meet back up in round 4. We are joining back up here, and it's time to start the fun part of the project with the color work. The key to color work, especially the stranded method, stranded color work, the key to this, again, is to work slow, deliberately, take your time, be patient, and have fun. However, it is also worth your while to plan ahead. So anytime you're beginning a row that has color work in it, it's good to take a look at that row and determine, 1, how many colors am I going to need to work with? And for row number 4, there are only 2. Row number 5, we will be working with the light blue, red, more of the light green, and then we'll be using some of our Dublin dark green color here in one part of that row. And then in the next row, you can see we switch back and forth between the light and the dark greens, and then we get into the red, and then we go back again, switching back and forth between the light and the dark green color. So let's get back here to row 4, And we'll take them one at a time. If we go down to the bottom of our chart, we have 35 stitches that are the light fig color, the light green. After stitch number 35, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red stitches. One other note on color work is when you are using multiple colors, in our case we'll have 5 colors eventually, it's best to lay them out on your table or around you if you're sitting on a couch or something like that in a specific order, and then just try to leave them in that order. And as you pick up and drop yarns, trying to direct them into the slot that they're in, that will help you from getting your yarns all twisted up. And so at the end of each round, I like to stop and untwist anything that might have gotten twisted so it doesn't continue to perpetuate that way or round after round. Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But to start out, I have completed, I believe, 33 stitches of round number 4. And here's my loop down here. And you can see that compared to our ribbing, this is starting to take on a little bit of an angle. And that's because when we do these continuous rounds of split single crochet, the fabric will start to take on a bit of an angle. You can block that out after you're done with a little bit of seam blocking, or sometimes you can just give it a tug and it stays pretty straight up and down for the most part. Okay, so don't get too concerned if you're noticing that it's starting to slant. That's very normal. As I said, according to the chart, we need to do 35 stitches of the light green, and then we'll switch over to the red for 5 stitches before we switch back to our light green. And I've counted out, and I've got 33 light green stitches in round 4. We will be making our color change in the stitch right before we make our first red stitch. Okay, so this is 33. Let's do 34. 35 is our last green stitch, and we'll be making that color change in the middle of that stitch. So we're going to start out as normal, inserting down and at an angle to pop through the back on between the legs of the V. And we'll yarn over and pull up a loop so we have the 2 loops on our hook, making this one a little longer. And now to finish off our stitch, we're going to drop our green yarn in the back, and we're just going to drape the red yarn over our hook, leaving a nice tail, 6 inches or so. And we go ahead and pull that through those 2 loops on our hook. And just check again to make sure you've got enough of a tail to weave in. And then you can reach back and pull down on the green yarn a little bit so you don't have an extra stretchy stitch there. Just evening everything out by giving that green yarn a little bit of a tug. So we have our 35th stitch completed, and we've got our red yarn on our hook ready for our 5 stitches of red. Okay, so we're going to make our split single crochet. 1, 2, and 3. There we've got our first 3 split single crochets, and at this point you can pause and you can give a little tug on the red if you need to tighten that up a bit, or a little tug on the green if you need to tighten up that last stitch before we change colors. And once you have it looking pretty even, there you go, you've got your first 3 stitches in the new color. Now, because we are going to be using this green again, we're going to catch this float on the back side of our work. And I do catch floats about every 4th stitch, 3 to 4 stitches usually, because if you don't, you get these very long floats on the back of your work, and it's really easy to catch those on things like your fingers or whatever. So you want nice and neat floats on the back of your work. And let me show you what that will look like when we're all done on a hat that I've already completed. But here's our hat inside out. The brim is folded, and you can see how I kept catching the floats every time so that you don't get any floats that are excessively long on the back side. And then as we go through the C, you can see all the different colors and all the different floats that are caught in there as well. But I just wanted you to visualize what these floats look like on the back and the reason for why we catch them every few stitches so that we don't have any floats that are excessively long and floppy and able to catch on any little thing that comes their way. Okay, so let's make a stitch and we'll catch our green yarn on this next split single crochet. So we start the stitch as normal. We go ahead and insert into the V, popping out on the other side. But before we yarn over and pull up our red loop, we're going to just simply lay the green working yarn over the top of our hook and then go ahead and complete your stitch. So you yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops. And there we have caught our green yarn on the back, and you can give that a little tug just to make it a little snugger, but you don't want to pull it tight because if you do, you wind up pulling this stitch over here way too tight and it does not look good at all. So that is something you want to be careful to manage those floats in a way that they're not loose and not big loops on the back of our work, but also not too tight. Okay, so that was our fourth stitch, and we said we needed to make 5 of our red stitches. So now we're doing number 5, but remember, the next stitch after that is going to be green again, so we need to make another color change. So we're doing that by yarning over, pulling up that loop nice and tall, and now we're just going to drop the red yarn over towards where it lives on our table and reach back and pick up our green yarn and yarn over and finish up that stitch. You can see that stitch is pulled a little bit long, so we just have to reach back there and pull that down to even out that stitch with the others. So the rest of this row number 4 is all green. So we could continue carrying this red yarn with us, just catching it every 3 to 4 stitches so that we have those floats on the back in red. But since we don't need it again until practically the same spot in the next round, I'm just going to leave it hang there. And then when we come to pick it up at the beginning of this red section on the next round, we'll just pull it over to this location and we'll create our stitch, and then we'll catch it as a float on the back as we go. And I'll show you how we do that. But for the remainder of round number 4 and all the way up until, and here's stitch number 32 of the next round, go ahead and work in your light green or your light blue color. Keep working in the lighter color, and then start again at the beginning in the same color. Remember, working in continuous rounds up until stitch number 32, and then we'll make that transition together, and I'll show you how to pick up this float. Okay, I've worked my way back around to where we need to make another color change. I like to be able to move my paper up and down because sometimes it's just easier for me to determine where I need to start a new color relative to the last round rather than counting every time at the bottom. So I know that I need 2 more red stitches before the 5 below. Okay, so if we look at our work, this is our last green stitch. We'll go right here in this stitch here, and then we'll make a switch, a color change switch here, and then we'll do 2 red stitches, and then we'll keep going and 2 red stitches after the 5 from the row below. This is where we're going to pick up our float from the other side of where we left it in the last row, instead of, we did not carry it around. Since it's all concentrated right here in this one section, since we don't use the red out on the ends of the rows, I'm just going to keep picking up the float each time and bringing it back over here and working across and leaving it there. And then in the next row, picking it up here, working across and leaving it there. I don't need to carry the red all the way around. Same goes for the yellow. Since we're only using it right here in this concentrated area, we'll just keep using it, dropping it, picking it up over here, using it, dropping it, picking it up over here. For the blues, or the greens in our case, and also the white, those I'll likely carry around unless I get to a row and I decide that it's only being used maybe one time. So as I get maybe all the way up here, you can see that after this row 14, our dark blue color or our green color is really only used in one concentrated area again on the chart. So in this case, I'll probably stop carrying it around with the white. Just leave it here, pick it up and use it, pick it up and use it. So you can do that anytime you want. But if it's used multiple times, like this in this case, you've got a light blue here, 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 and here, it's easier just to keep carrying it around. All right, so let's make our color change, and then we'll do our 7 red stitches across. All right, so I've inserted, I'm yarning over and pulling up a loop. Now again, I'm going to drop this over to where our green yarn ball lies, and it's going to be crossed over the top of our red yarn, and I'm going to pull that tail down and out of our way so it's not distracting. And again, this is how we keep our yarns from getting super twisted. I'm picking up the red yarn, which is attached over here, and I'm just going to yarn it over my hook and then pull it through, and I'm going to leave it nice and loose on the back side. I might even pull a little bit out. I want that to be loose because I don't want it bunching up or pulling the stitch tight. So we're going to be catching that one as we go. So I'm going to back up and just start this over because I've talked so much in between. So we're starting with the green. We're going to be making our color change. So we insert, yarn over with the green and pull up a loop, drop the green to its location, pick up the red, yarn it over, and pull it through. And then, so it's not pulling tight, just going to loosen that up and let that float hang back there. Again, we can tighten down our green stitch a little. And now we're going to be working in our red yarn. So we're going to complete our next stitch. We're going to insert, yarn over with the red, pull up a loop, yarn over, complete our next one to that next green stitch. So we've got 2, and now we're just working into the red stitches from the round below. And at this point, we've got that float back there, plus we have this green float. We can actually catch them both at the same time. So when we insert into this stitch, we can just go underneath both the green yarn and that red float, pull up our loop, complete this stitch, and now we've caught both floats so that we don't have a lot of slack in the back of our work. And then we just keep on going, keeping in mind we're going to be using that green yarn again. So we've got 1, we just caught the green yarn, we're going to go 2, and we're doing 3, and now we're doing a 4th stitch. So we want to catch that green yarn again because we don't want to go more than 3 or 4 stitches without catching it. So we're just going to lay it over our hook in the back, yarning over, pulling up a loop, and there we go. We've got 2 more red stitches left, so we'll finish those off. 1, 2, and now we need to change back to the green color. So we'll drop our red yarn to its location and change over to green. Give this a little tug to tighten everything up. Now we're back to green, and we can start working around the rest of round 5. All right, so let's take a look at what we did. On the back side, we've got our red yarn just hanging here after we changed colors. We'll pick it up again over here in the next round. Got that tail there, and then we've got our floats. And that red float that we pulled back got caught back here with the green one, and it's nice and hidden as well. So you don't have any excess floats hanging around back there. Okay, so that's how we'll work, either picking up a float, pulling it over and picking it up here and then catching it so that it doesn't have a lot of slack on the back, or we will work with multiple colors and catching them as we go along like we did here with the green and just carrying it all the way around the round. So for colors C and D, the red and the yellow, we'll use this pickup method, and for colors A, B, and E, we will primarily carry those around the work. So we'll come back together in round 6 where we're going to be adding in a 3rd color. And I'll show you how we do that when we get to it. All right, so let's look back at our chart now. We made those 7 red stitches in color, I guess that's color C. And now we need to go back to our light green or our light blue and work over here to where we're going to pick up a 3rd color. And that's our darker color. So that's going to be Dublin for us here in our project. Okay, so I see that after the 7 red stitches, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and we'll change colors in that 13th stitch. All right, so I've got 2. Now we're at the 13th stitch, so we're going to do a color change. I'm going to drape the dark green over my hook and pull it through the loops. All right, now we're ready to go, and we need 3. All right, and after the 3rd stitch, we're going back to the light green, so we drop our dark green, pick up the light green, and pull through those last 2 loops, and now we're back to the light green. And everything in the back is good. I want to make sure that float's not too tight because you don't want it to prevent you from stretching the hat to be able to put it over your head. So we want it to be a little loose, but not too loose. So we have switched back over to the light green. And now again, we need to look ahead and say, okay, do we want to abandon the blue here and pick it up when we get back to it? Or are we going to need that blue when we get to the next round over here at the beginning? So if we move up from round 5 to round 6, I see that I do need the darker color multiple times in the next round. So that means I'm going to continue to carry it through the rest of this round 5, and then at the beginning of round 6, I'll keep carrying it until I get back to it. So to do that, I'll start, and again, after every 3 or 4 stitches, I'll just catch it in back and keep doing that to carry it around. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess I'd like to catch it on the 4th stitch normally. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and now the 4th stitch, I'm just going to take the green and drape it over after I insert my hook into that V. And now I've caught it in the back. So that's how we'll continue to work and carry that darker colored yarn along with us. Every 4th stitch or so, we'll just drape it right over our hook and complete that stitch, and off we go. And that's all there is to carrying colors. Now, once you get multiple colors, it does get a little bit more intense, I guess, because you're going to have to remember to catch those various colors together each time when you have so many working at once, and that's where you just have to take your time and plan ahead. I drape that over my hook once again, and you can see how the floats just keep coming along on the back side. So let's come back together when we get to the red color change in round 6 so that I can show you how we'll carry 2 different colors across this stretch of red stitches. And once you know how to do it through this section, you'll be set to manage floats for the rest of the time. You just add in extra floats as you go. Okay, so we're going to be changing over to the darker green. Yarning over, pulling up our loop, dropping off our light green, picking up our dark. And now we've got 2 stitches in the dark green. And now 2, and we need to go to the red in the next stitch. So yarning over, dropping green. And now we need to pick up red again from across the way, bringing it back to this spot, lengthening out that float in back so that we can catch it. We got our 2 green yarns back there as well. I'm going to tug on this green just a bit. So now we're into our red, and we're going to go into that stitch. It's been 3 stitches now since we used this light green. And even though it hasn't been 3 stitches since I've used the dark green, I'm going to keep those yarns together just to make it easier on myself. So I'm going to go into that stitch, and I've got this red float hanging back here. I could catch all 3 of them. We can just do that. It'll just be easier. So I'm going to take all my floats, drape them over my hook, yarn over, and complete this stitch. And now we've caught all of those floats, and now we can make 3 stitches with no catching. So 1, 3, and now we're in our 4th stitch, and we're going to catch all of our floats again. And that's it. So whether you have 3 colors you're trying to manage, 4 colors, or 5, you just do it in the same way, just making sure about every 3 stitches or every 4th stitch, you stop and catch the floats. Now we don't have our red float anymore because we've gone past where we picked it up from. So we're back to catching the floats for these 2 colors. And I believe I need 11 of these red, 8, 10, I've got 1 more, and then I need to change back to the dark green color. So we'll pull up that loop, drop the red, find our dark green, pull it through, and we're off. And we've got 3 of the dark green stitches. And now the 3rd, and we're going back to light green. And we will complete out this round in the light green, just being sure to carry our dark green with us. So we bring that over. Let me just fold this over. You can see 2 things. One, you can see we have not twisted any of our colors because we're keeping them all in their lanes and we're dropping them to the lane that they come from. So any twisting that's happening is happening in the floats and it takes care of itself. We're not getting our yarns all twisted. And then 2, you can just see how our floats look on the back. They're not tight, they're not loose, just kind of neutral back there. And we are moving along. So that's it. From here, you can just keep working using the chart, counting, going slow, taking your time, planning ahead. And when you get to the yellow, you'll simply just add that in and you'll use it for 3 stitches, leave it there, and then pick it up when you get back here, pick it up, pick it up. And the other ones you'll keep carrying around. And then when you get up to round 11 on the medium size, you will pick up the white. And once you get done, say with the lighter green or blue, and you get to the next row where it doesn't exist anymore, then you can just cut that yarn, leaving a tail. You'll be done with it and you can weave that in later and just keep moving up the chart. Okay, so let's check in when we get to round 21. We're back. I have actually worked all the way through row 21, and row 21 in the medium size is just a single white row. And so there are no color changes. You should have all of your yarn snipped. And if you have stuck around and made it this far through the video, congratulations. It is challenging to be working with 5 different balls of yarn all attached to your project. I hope you're loving what you're seeing in front of you if you've made it this far. And if you did, please drop me a comment below. I'd love to hear how it's gone for you. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it stressful? I find that this middle section, when we've got the 5 yarns all attached to the project, I really have to slow down and kind of go back and forth a little bit to make sure I get everything right, because it just is a lot to manage as you get through there. Let's turn this inside out. Take a look at our floats and tails. So this is what mine looks like. Even across the C here, you can see all the floats they're loose, but they're not saggy. Also not too tight so that you can get a little bit of stretch, but it is a very dense fabric. It's very warm, this hat. At this point, let's flip this back the other way and do some measurements. Our beanie is measuring about 8 3/4 inches long, with the brim unfolded, of course. And then across it's measuring 9, depending on how you stretch it. If you stretch it a little bit, it's 9 1/4. I've stretched it even more and measured 9 1/2. It will give and take a little bit because this is stretchy. You can see there is a little bit of a bias in the slant to the stitches. And again, that comes from working in continuous rounds with a little blocking, a little tugging. It straightens right out. You can also see here, I had marked that first stitch way back at row 2, and I never moved my marker. I can, and I probably will at this point, but you can see that I can just follow this column right up. Nothing changes, and I can always keep track of the first stitch just by following the column from where this stitch marker lived. And I am going to move this up now, just higher, so that I don't have to look so far down to figure out where row or stitch number 1 is. I've finished round 21. Rounds 22 through 25 are just simply a repeat of round 21. No increasing, no decreasing, No color changes, easy peasy. You have gotten through the tough part of this project and it's all smooth sailing from here. So let's meet back up after we complete round 25 and we will start decreasing for the crown. We're back after 25 rounds and I have woven in my ends on the inside. Just one quick note on weaving. You want to make sure that if you're weaving in a red yarn, you're only weaving that in through red stitches so that you don't have red yarn showing through your green stitches or something like that. So when you do your weaving, you just want to make sure you stick with the same color yarn for the path that you follow with your yarn needle. I am all ready to go and we're going to begin our decreasing for the crown. And to do that, we're going to be decreasing 8 stitches every other round. For round 26, I went ahead and used my stitch markers to mark every 9th stitch all the way around. And because we have 72 stitches, that divides out evenly, 8 times 9. So you can see we have 8 stitch markers. For round 26, we are going to crochet our split single crochets for 7 stitches, and then we'll be joining our 8th and our 9th stitch. I've marked the 9th stitch, which corresponds to this post right here. So this is my 7th split single crochet. So 2, 4, 6, 7. And now I'm going to join my 8th and 9th stitch with a split single crochet 2 together. To create that stitch, I'm going to go and insert through the first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, nice and high. And then I'm going to repeat the process. I'm going to insert in the next V post, yarn over, pull up a loop. So now I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, and that will create a split single crochet 2 together. Now you can mark that stitch and we're going to repeat that process. We're going to work across for a total of 7 stitches, and that will bring us up to the stitch right before the marker. So here's 7, and now we'll be joining our 8th and 9th stitch. Joining with a split single crochet 2 together. So insert through the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert through the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops to join those 2 stitches together. Okay, so keep working around, joining every 8th and 9th stitch if you're working on the size medium. If you're working on a small or a large, you'll just want to refer to the pattern for the decrease counts. And then we'll join back up to work round 27 together. I've completed round 26, and now we're on to round 27. And round 27 is just 1 split single crochet in each stitch around, which is obviously very familiar to us at this point. However, I just want to show you how we work when we get to the stitches that were joined in round 26. So I am 1 stitch before my marker, and remember I marked the joined stitch. So now I'm at that joined stitch. I'm going to remove my marker, and you can see, and I've put a black background behind us here so you can see my white yarn, but you can see I've got my overlapping stitches. So here's the one that's laying on top, and then the one that is overlapping is behind it a little bit. There are still 2 V posts there from our join, and what we want to do when we insert into this stitch, we're going to insert into that first V and also through that back V that's behind it, and then pull up our loop to make our single crochet. And that is how we make that split single crochet into those joined stitches. And then I should go back and replace my stitch marker, keep that stitch marked. So when you when you work into the joined stitches, you want to mark the stitch that you make. And then when we come around in the next decrease round, it'll be just like the one before, where we will split single crochet in each of the stitches leading up to the stitch before the marker. and then we'll remove the marker, join the stitches, replace the marker. And we'll keep this decreasing pattern going, decreasing 8 stitches every other row until we only have 8 stitches left. Okay, so work on your decreases and we'll get back together when you have 8 stitches left. Okay, here's our hat after round 40 for the medium, where we have reduced down to 8 stitches and we have this little hole that we need to close up. But you can see the nice clean lines that our decrease pattern makes on the crown of the hat, and it's just great. I've got the brim all folded up here too, so you can see that, and our hat is darn near finished. Let's finish it up together. So after you're down to the 8 stitches that are left, you've got your active stitch here, and we're just going to cut a long tail, quite long, and I'm going to chain 1 and pull that tail all the way through so that it's nice and secure and we won't have any stitches coming undone. And then we're just going to put our yarn on our yarn needle, weaving in back and forth through those remaining stitches, all 8 of them. We're just going to weave in and out, pulling that tail through as we go so that we can cinch up our last 8 stitches. So every couple of ones here, it starts to get kind of tight. Pull it on through. So keep going around until your hole closes up. Let me get this spread out a little here. So there you can see we've got our last round all joined together. And if you want, you can go back through again just to close up any remaining gaps. This will all be covered if you put the pom-pom on top. And then once you're satisfied, just poke that yarn down right through the middle, bring it on through to the back side, the inside of your beanie, and give it a nice tug to cinch everything up nice and tight, and then go under a couple loops of a stitch on the back side and make yourself a little embroidery knot to keep everything nice and tight. And then that's it. You're just going to weave in this end. You might make a couple knots just to make sure everything's nice and secure. And then weave in this end and trim it up. And your beanie is complete. Through the magic of editing, you can see that I have added a yarn pom-pom to the top of our beanie. I have that attached on there temporarily because when you do wash your beanie, you want to make sure to take that pom-pom off. I have mine just attached with a bow, and I can just simply untie that bow to take off my pom-pom when it's time to wash the hat. I did make a video a couple weeks ago showing how to make this pom-pom and how to attach it to the beanie. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link in the description below and potentially a card up here or up there. I don't remember where those pop up. Okay, I want to thank you so much. I know this was a long tutorial. If you stuck with me through the whole thing, congratulations. You have yourself a colorful Colorado beanie. All right, thanks for joining. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss notifications for any of my new tutorials coming your way. Have a great day.